I love Sid Meier's Gathering. I love Magic the Civilization. I'm sorry, I got that the wrong way around. I love Sid Meier's Civilization, and I love Magic the Gathering. Much better. And this is the Maya pack of my homemade cards based on Civilization 6. Now, the Mayan will have 6 cards as usual, and we're talking about 1 legendary land, 1 leader, 2 unique items, 1 card based on the agenda of the leader, and 1 bonus card for which I just had to use my imagination. So another one of the very traditionalist packs. An overview of the Maya looking at my equivalency chart, which concept of Civ 6 translated to which concept of Magic, will tell us that we will have a lot of luxuries, and luxuries translate to the keyword exalted. So this would be perfect for a Voltron deck where you have 1 big fat creature attacking and all of your exalted instances give it a boost. And in this case, the exalted will come from luxuries. There will be gold. Gold and luxury are tied together anyway, and gold translates to treasures. There will be improvement, an emphasis on improvements. Farms, pastures, observatories, which is the unique district of the Mayan. So all of these are considered improvements upon the land, and those translate to the concept of land auras in Magic terms. So expect lots of land auras. This is another one of those land aura-centric civs. Science. Science translates to draw. That's true, and it's always true. After all, drawing comes from the library, and science comes from a library. However, given the colors of the Maya, draw in this case will mean impulse draw. So some exile from your library, and then you may cast these cards this turn. More on the color scheme of the Maya in just a second. But first, let's mention that the Maya will have a weird concept that is quite unique. Don't look for that in my equivalency chart. The concept of sextile distance. Well, just the concept of distance in the first place is rather unique, but specifically a sextile distance. And I chose to translate that into the concept of a limit of 6 lands. So having a limit of 6 lands only on the battlefield. Now, a limit on the number of lands is not the same thing as distance between lands, but you'll see it sort of kind of almost makes sense. The color scheme, color identity of the Maya will be white, red, and green. So the Naya scheme. Isn't that cute? How the Maya are represented by a Naya color scheme that absolutely did not play into my decision. It's just that the organization of that society seemed like it should have white. The jungles of the Mayan territory called for green, and red for the savagery of its warriors. So it just so happens to be called Naya, Maya. Well, who knows, maybe there's a god of coincidence out there who totally thinks that no, this was not an accident. Anyway, the land of the Maya will need to involve the special ability, of course, of the Mayan people in Civilization 6. The ability is called Mayab, as you will soon see, is indeed the name of the land. That's the name that the original Mayan people call their homeland. It says that settling adjacent to fresh water and the coast does not provide the usual extra housing that your cities normally depend on, so the Mayan cities need to rely on something else for housing. It says, instead, each farm provides an additional housing and +1 production for every adjacent observatory, and +1 gold and +1 amenities for every luxury adjacent to the city center. So lots to unpack in there, but really it can boil down to having improvements upon the land, specifically farm, but for our purpose we'll treat that as meaning any improvement upon the land will allow you to have normal sized city like everyone else. So the Mayan are very reliant on those land improvements. And secondly, you also get gold and amenities from luxury. So again, we've got this whole amalgam of gold equals treasures, luxuries equal exalted, and I blended all that into one big melting pot and turned that into the legendary land that you can see here. There's the land of the Mayab, an uncommon legendary land that says that it enters tapped, and for 3 mana, 1 of each, white, green, red, and tap, until end of turn, treasures you control have exalted. So there you go, your people get happiness, get amenities from owning treasures. Treasures standing in for luxuries, of course, so it makes sense with everything that we just read. But also, let's not forget the reliance on the land improvements. The Mayan are nothing without their farms, without their land improvements. So this ability is not available unless this land, the land of the Mayab, is enchanted. That's what it says. Activate only this ability if this land is enchanted. What is the best land aura to stick on this land? I don't know, you tell me. I created so many. You can draw upon the existing ones from actual Magic the Gathering cards to answer me, but let me know which aura you think is perfect for this. It's tricky because usually most auras will grant the enchanted land an ability. So you will get an ability that will require the land to be tapped. So with this land being enchanted, now you have a choice. You can either use this exalted ability built in the land, or the ability granted by the aura. You can't really do both because they both require the land to be tapped. Maybe you find a way to untap the land, use both, and I don't know. Maybe there are auras that we can think of that grant this land a static ability, in which case you don't care that the land is tapped for a purpose of its own. The aura will work no matter what, so it's possible that there are some out there that could qualify for that. But either way, it's a limiting ability, I realize that, and that's why it's only an uncommon. But the upshot is very good. Treasures you control have exalted. That means every treasure out there that you might have amassed a huge quantity of treasures. They boost your one Voltron attacker to uncalculable proportions, so it's worth it. And also the fact that this land taps for 3 possible mana. 1 green, or a red or white, as long as you don't mind losing 1 life. So there's the Mayab, land of the Maya. Lady Six Sky, the very interesting and unique Civ 6 leader that forces you to play close to your capital. So it's been calculated that this limit of 6 tiles, this distance of 6 tiles, allow you to build cities in a bit of a snowflake formation around your capital. But of course, that's not always possible. You've got mountains, you've got the coast that could limit your expansion, so you might not ever be able to do a perfect snowflake. But yes, you are trying to do that kind of snowflake because her ability Ixmutal Aja says that non-capital cities within 6 tiles of the capital gain 10% to all yields, and when founded, receive a builder. So that's a pretty good boost, but indeed, because the cities can't be founded too close to one another, and because this 6-tile limit is rather, well, limiting, that's why you end up with this snowflake pattern, and you can only therefore have a limited amount of truly good cities. Any cities outside of that radius will be much crappier. Indeed, it says that they receive a minus 15% to all yields, so that's not a lot of fun. It really limits you to really having 6 amazingly good cities around your capital. And there's also a combat strength bonus to units within 6 tiles of the capital. So because you can only truly have 6 great cities outside of your capital when you play the Maya, I turned that into an ability that compares cities to lands. So you can only have 6 lands on the battlefield, but those lands that you do have get a boost. So let's look at the card of Lady Six Sky. She cast 1 white, 1 green, 1 red. She is a 3/4 rare human noble advisor. And she has a landfall, but it's one of those bad landfalls. It says, whenever a land enters under your control, if you control more than 6 lands, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and create a treasure token. So basically, whenever you drop your 7th land, you're not allowed to keep that. You have to bounce a land back in your hand. Could be any of them, it doesn't have to be the one that you just got, but yes, you cannot go over 6, essentially. As a compensation, you get a treasure. So essentially, you are allowed to have more lands, but those lands beyond the 6th one are one-use-only lands, aka treasures. When you think about it, that's what a treasure is. It's a land that you can only use once, and then it's sacrificed. So there you go. Your 7th, your 8th, your 9th land, all of those are essentially treasures. And the rest of your lands, well, they get stuck in your hand. So isn't that amazing? The Mayan have the colors of Borborygmos, the guy that lets you discard lands from your hand in order to do massive damage. So he might be a really cool inclusion in this deck, because usually you will tend to have, around to mid to late game, a lot of lands stuck in your hand. So that's worth thinking about. So of course including Borborygmos in your deck is certainly not a good enough upshot to compensate from this nasty landfall ability, this big penalty. So let's read on to find out what your 6 lands that you are allowed to have do get as a bonus. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So there you go. All your lands, all your 6 lands, all 6 of them, they get perfect mana fixing. And there's more. They also get the ability to tap, reveal the top 6 cards of your library, exile up to 1 enchantment from among them, and shuffle the others on the bottom of your library. Until end of turn, you may cast the exiled card. So how's that for a compensation? Your lands have perfect fixing, but also every one of your 6 lands gets to impulse draw to look for enchantments. So definitely, since Lady Six Sky is your potential commander for this Mayan deck, then that means that you definitely want to turn this deck into yet another enchantment heavy deck. So another good enchantress deck, and specifically land auras, why not? So I created so many land auras in this project, so you might as well make use of them, and therefore you also increase your chances of finding the perfect land aura to stick on the Mayab land that we saw earlier. And obviously, doing this does something that I absolutely adore. You get to cast from exile. I absolutely love this cast from exile gimmick. I mention all the time, a Faldorn wolf deck that I just love. And therefore, Lady Six Sky and the entire Mayan set is one that I really like, that I would totally love to build if these cards existed for real, because you get to do that. You get to cast from exile, cast from somewhere other than your hand, which is the paradox ability that the Doctor Who cards named. And finally, let's not forget that Lady Six Sky is very happy to fight at home. Her units get a bonus when she fights in her homeland. Therefore, I gave this last little ability. Whenever a creature you control blocks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. The logic here is if you are blocking, typically you're fighting at home. So it was very easy to turn this whole fight at home concept into an ability. Your blocking creatures get stronger. That simple. So she is very defensive. Hold on, let's not move too fast away from Lady Six Sky. A little bit more on the logic of the impulse draw of enchantments. So why is it that you can only go and fetch an enchantment from these cards that you get to exile and impulse draw? It's because your cities get a free builder, don't forget. They get a bonus yield, sure, and they get a free builder. Free builder means someone that will help you cast an enchantment, an improvement, an aura upon your land. Of course, yes, I know, I could have said specifically an aura, and even more, I could have said an aura that has enchant land, but no, I was more general than that, so you are not limited to land auras, or even auras at all. You could just go fetch any enchantment, but still, I wanted to explain my logic, why I made you go get an enchantment from this impulse draw, as a nod to the fact that your cities get a free builder and a bonus yield. And finally, do notice the fact that it's an impulse draw of how many cards? 6, of course, since 6 is the magic number of Lady Six Sky. So the land limit of 6, limit of 6 lands, all of that, everything is 6. On one of my parody videos on this channel, I even have another leader say that she is drunk all the time and calls her Lady Six-Pack. Moving on now to the unique unit of the Mayan, it's the Holche. So it is an archer, therefore of course I gave it reach, and it gets a bonus for fighting wounded units in Civilization 6. So the card that goes with that is a green-red human archer, common. It has reach as promised. It is 2/2, so decent normal body for a 2-cost creature. And this creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn when blocking or blocked by a creature that has been dealt damage this turn. So, exactly what the ability says in the game. It was pretty easy to make that guy into a card. We won't need to linger on him too much longer. Okay, we're done. Now, the observatory is the unique improvement of the Mayan people. So it replaces the campus, so expect some science, but in this case, science will be impulse draw. And in the game, the observatory gets bonus adjacencies from improvements. So another thing that relies on improvements. In this case, it's plantations, farms, but again, I treat all land auras as potentially useful for the purposes at hand. In this case, plantations, farms, yeah, sure, any land aura is a plantation or a farm, conceivably. So there we go, it suits the purpose. And since we're talking about a bonus that scales, so the more the observatory is surrounded by such land improvements, the bigger the bonus. Well, I made the magic card scale up, depending on the number of enchanted lands you control. Let's take a look at the observatory. It is also a red-green spell for the exact same cost, 1 red and 1 green, enchantment, aura, enchant land, and the enchanted land has pay 1 green and tap it, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of enchanted lands you control. You may play those cards this turn. So there you go, one massive impulse draw. Well, massive if you have a lot of enchanted lands. There we go. So this totally belongs in a deck that focuses on land auras. I'm so glad that I've made this into a thing. I've created so many land auras so that there would be conceivably decks that are essentially land aura tribals, something that, doesn't really exist in Magic right now. There's no reason, there are no incentives, there are no cards like that scale up the more land auras you have, either on the battlefield or on a single land. But now those cards are a reality. Well, a fake reality on my computer and on YouTube, but still, a virtual reality, let's call it that. And of course, this impulse draw of the observatory is not limited to enchantments. You don't have to pick an enchantment from the exiled cards. You can truly play any and all of those cards. So a really true impulse draw that would totally fit in my Faldorn deck. Well, with some modifications. I currently rely on mana dorks in my Faldorn deck for ramping. I would have to take those out and instead put in some land auras that give me ramp, so wild growth and the like. And then the observatory, when and if it comes out, would be absolutely amazing. Here's my card based on Lady Six Skies' agenda. So in the game, when you play against her as an AI, she will love you if you are far away. She doesn't like you if you are close to her cities, so of course, her little snowflake, don't you dare intrude her delicate private snowflake. That sounds very inappropriate. I'm so sorry that my mind went there. Anyways, let's move on. Private snowflake, wow. Okay, so she doesn't like you if you're too close. So therefore, I made a card that punishes you when you attack her. Essentially, the logic is, if you attack her, that's because your creatures have traveled to her lands. And then she doesn't like you anymore. So it's a defensive spell. The card, like her agenda, is called Solitary, and it's a rare enchantment for 2 green and 2 generic that says, whenever a creature attacks you, that creature's controller may return it to its owner's hand at end of combat. If they don't, Solitary deals damage equal to the number of lands they control to them. So you, my opponent, the more lands you have when you attack me, the more my enchantment will hurt you. My solitary nature means that you get hurt the more lands you have if you attack me, so you might as well have stayed in your big fat land, then you wouldn't have gotten hurt. That's the logic. And of course, the controller of those attacking creatures is in full control of preventing that from happening if they agree that those creatures will be bounced to their hand. So high cost to pay, or maybe joke's on you because they have creatures that they do want to cast again and again and again to get an ETB, so I don't know, that's something that will usually be good, could conceivably turn against you. But one thing's for sure, it totally matches the agenda of Lady Six Sky, and that allows us to move on to the very last card, the one for which I had to be a little creative because I ran out of concepts. That always happens for those very simple civs with just 1 leader and nothing fancy, no bells and whistles. So in this case, the 6th and final card is an equipment. I simply focused on Lady Six Sky's Jade Tip Spear, and I made the Jade Tip Spear. Could have made it green because it's green, but it felt more appropriate to make it white and red because it's an equipment, and the best colors for equipment are indeed red and white, and look what it does some direct damage and deals with vigilance, so again, red and white, perfectly in keeping with those colors. It's an uncommon equipment that says equipped creature has vigilance and tap the creature, this creature deals 1 damage to any target, and target creature gains vigilance until the end of turn. So not only it has vigilance, but if you use that ability before combat, when it's relevant, then you can give someone else vigilance, because maybe you never intended to attack with that creature, but someone else could use vigilance. So there you go, whole bunch of flexibility for that kind of thing, especially if you have an equipment deck. That could be interesting. I personally do have an equipment deck, and it is indeed red and white. But there's already such an overwhelming choice of equipments to put in a deck like that no, I don't think my jade-tipped spear would make the cut. But hey, it's nice to have, and it fits the theme of that civilization. It especially goes hand in hand with the Hulche unit, because that's a creature that cares about damaged units. So there you go, in the middle of combat, creature blocking or blocked by your Hulche could suddenly take a damage, boom! And your Hulche sees, aha, a damaged unit, instantly it becomes +2/+2. Your opponent might have forgotten about that detail and surprise. Or even better, to truly surprise them, cast a lightning bolt, something like that, to truly surprise them with partial damage to that creature, and the Hulche gets a bonus. So it's a thought. Truly, it's not the focus of a Mayan deck. You would probably want to load it with, whenever you cast from exile, paradox effects. Or perhaps you want to focus on forcing your enemy creatures to attack because you've got that defensive bonus. Or perhaps you want to use landfall because you always have lands in your hand. Here's a thought. What if you double Lady Six Sky's landfall ability with something like Annie Joins Up? That spell has exactly those colors, so that could totally be a thing. Or something like the Green Weaver Druid, you know, that thing that essentially doubles your landfall triggers. So my point is, what if you double Lady Six Sky's landfall trigger? Whenever a land enters under your control, if you control more than 6 lands, no, actually, I take it back. If you copy that ability, it will work once, it'll see the if you have more than 6 lands, and it will say, yes you do. And then you will have to return a land to your hand and create a treasure, but then the second instance on the stack will trigger, but then it won't see you as having more than 6 lands, so it'll just fizzle. So no, never mind, I take it back. Copying that ability doesn't do anything. I thought that maybe you could get a whole lot of treasures to cheat that a little bit, but no, not really. However, yeah, building the deck around a landfall theme could actually work, because you've got always a land in your hand, conceivably, when you've reached 6. So let me know if there's anything else that I haven't said, some other strategies that have sparked in your mind as you were listening to me rant about this awesome, if only made-up card that I designed, Lady Six Sky, and all of these other cards in the Mayan pack. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Neil, as I always say, as the name of my channel says, but I don't really mind about that so much. Subscribing pays the bill much more than kneeling. The real Loki might disagree, but hey, I'm not the real Loki. I'm just some guy on the internet. Or am I? That's exactly what the real Loki would want you to believe.